introduce, my name is Ruth Ann Rugg. I am the transitional leader for the Coalition of State Museum Associations. I have been with COSMA since it was a mere idea, and am happy to be working with this organization as we move into the future, strengthening state museum associations all along the way. I also work my other hat part-time for the Texas Association of Museums, and it is TAM that we have to thank for loaning us the webinar platform, and I do appreciate that. The person online that you cannot see is Jennifer Coleman. She's kind of our technical wizard. So if ever we get stuck in the middle of all this, you will hear us say, Jennifer, what do we do next? And she will bail us out. But it will be my pleasure today to take myself off the screen here shortly and leave it to our two guest speakers. Now, if you read the publicity, you know that there were supposed to be three. But our friend Lisa Dodson, who's the executive director of the Kansas Museums Association, had a minor medical procedure, and the tube left her throat where she absolutely cannot speak. I suspect there are people who are delighted about that, but I am not one of them, because I'm really going to miss having Lisa's input here. Her role in this project was pretty swell. But we do have Shannon Shu, who was at the time of this project on the board for the Kansas Museums Association, and as you'll hear in a moment, played a really pivotal role. And if you signed on early enough to hear, today is Shannon's 20th anniversary at her museum. She is at Shawneetown in Shawnee, Kansas, where she is curator of collections. She's taken care of all kinds of things, does history, does exhibitions, and she has really represented that organization well in regional and national organizations. And currently, well, this is impressive, the Johnson County Museum Collections Committee. She's a native of Kansas, and she got her master's degree in historical administration and museum studies from the University of Kansas. So everyone, welcome Shannon. In the other corner is Bob Workman. Bob Workman is a longtime friend of mine. He has instructed me to stop saying old friend, but we go back a long way from the days in the 90s when we worked together at the Amy Carter Museum in Fort Worth, Texas. Bob has recently retired. Oops, I just knocked myself off my, there we go. I'm going to take off my glasses to read this. Bob has recently retired as the director of the Ulrich Museum of Art at Wichita State University. And those of you who know Kansas may know that he was the founding director of the Flint Hills Discovery Center. And, you know, Arkansas, maybe you've heard of a little place called Crystal Bridges. Crystal Bridges Museum of Art, Bob really was the founding director and helped put it all together. I tell people he built the place. So you will understand why we are so pleased to have him interested and involved in the State Museum Association community and here with us today. So with that said, let me just do a little technical thing. I'll put my glasses back on. Everyone sees that they have this little panel over here that indicates their name, and there's a way that we can mute you and unmute you, and there's a way that you can raise your hand to ask a question. I am going to keep track of the questions, so anytime along the way during the presentation, if you think of it, go ahead and type it in, or if we need to stop for some reason, raise your hand, and we'll pay attention to that too. So with no further ado, I'm going to undo my webcam. I know how to do that. And leave it to Shannon and Bob. There you go.
Good afternoon. I'm Shannon Shu, and I'm joined, as you heard, with Bob Workman to talk to you today about organizational innovation and how KMA took some great strides to make our organization more stable and set us up for success in the future. We first presented this as a case study at the AASLH meeting in Kansas City in September of 2018. And so this is our second go of sharing this information with you. So we hope that you find it interesting, and that that if you have questions, that we can help sort any of that out. I was president of KMA in 2013 and 2014, and I just happened to happen there at a rather pivotal time for our organization, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But today, the most interesting thing you're going to hear about is how Kansas Museums Association has transitioned our organizational leadership from that of having one part-time contracted employee to having an agreement with the Wichita State University Public Policy and Management Center. In order to make that make sense, we're going to talk about the history of the Kansas Museums Association and its evolution. We're going to talk about some strategic steps that we took to position the organization so that when opportunities like this with Wichita State present themselves, we're able to take action. We'll talk about the university relationship and the contract specifics, and then we'll also talk about how the Kansas Museums Association has benefited from this arrangement. We wish very much that Lisa Dodson was with us today. She certainly is the most pivotal person that works on this, but unfortunately she's not with us, so Bob and I will soldier on. And with that, I will turn it over to Bob.
Oops, there we go. Hi, everybody. I'm delighted to be able to be a part of this today. I wanted to give a piece of context to this as well. While I believe that the steps, while in hindsight, I believe that the steps we have gone through as an organization over the last decade positioned us very well to make this rather, I think, innovative relationship with Wichita State for management. There was serendipity involved, and it would be inappropriate for us to ignore that. Lisa Dodson had been an employee at Wichita State University in a program called the Hugo Wall School 10, 15 years prior, and had the opportunity, and then went out on her own as a contract employee with a number of clients, one of which was the Kansas Museums Association. She was a 1/5 time employee, so 1 day a week paid employee. About a year before it transpired, so in about 2016, Lisa had opportunity to explore the possibility of returning to Wichita State University. And by that point, the Hugo Wall School was transitioning into the Public Policy and Management Center. And so the discussions to move forward along with Lisa into her new incarnation as an employee of Wichita State was something that was an opportunity for her and presented ultimately exciting opportunities for us as an organization. So while we'd love to say that we took this courageous move entirely through our own doing, that's inappropriate. It is very much a part of our commitment to Lisa Dodson and decisions that she made and processes that she went through to take KMA along as a client into this new role. And now on the 3rd year of this relationship, we believe that it was a very smart and very meaningful structure, and something that we're excited to share. So with that, I want to go back to Shannon, and she'll give us some early history.
Hey. Well, the Kansas Museums Association started in 1969 as an all-volunteer organization designed to inform members about what was happening in the state of Kansas and in museums in Kansas, and to also provide a venue for discussing regional and national matters. It's not too far off from what we still do today, but it was an all-volunteer organization, and it existed in that form until the 1990s. KMA in the 90s decided that we really needed more operational support and hired our first part-time contract employee. I say that and it makes it sound like we had all of this help, but KMA's never had, until very recently with our association with Wichita State, has only had a quarter-time employee. So that meant we were asking one person to spend no more than 10 hours a week working on all of our operational needs, which is pretty tall order. It was helped with a lot of our operational challenges, but it still left us in a fragile state. Sometimes records would get lost during staff changeover. It was sometimes hard to find someone with the right skills and schedule that could work 10 hours a week on our contract. And it did create some continuity issues for us. However, it did have us in a better position than we had been when we were all volunteer. By the time I became really involved in the board around 2009, 2010, it was clear that KMA was struggling. Like many volunteer organizations of its size, it was still providing services for members, and we still had people that wanted to be a part of it, but we lacked organizational direction. We were alternately churning and stagnant. We were doing things, but we weren't necessarily moving forward, and we were trying to provide value for our members, but we didn't necessarily know all the time what we could do uniquely well and what that value would be. More importantly, I think than that, we lacked financial stability. Like many organizations, we were tied to our all or nothing conferences. If our conference did well, we did well, and we were able to do other programs and things as a result of the money raised by that conference. But if our conference didn't do well, we were stymied until the next one. We really didn't have a lot of flexibility with our budget, and we really couldn't look to the future because we lacked that stability. Another thing that we were really in danger of is we were in danger of losing talent. Because of the lack of financial stability and the inability to commit to an innovative program, we were in danger of losing our most talented board members. People didn't want to be a part of an organization that wasn't working towards being its best self. And so KMA desperately needed a change, or it was going to become defunct. So we did what we tell all of our members to do when they find themselves in this position, and we embarked on a strategic planning journey. We spent about a year working with an outside consultant and looking at our organization and developing a strategic plan. By 2013, we had completed writing the plan, and we were starting to really implement it and to live it, if you will. And it was at that time that we were really getting familiar with it, really starting to get going, when this other fantastic opportunity presented itself. And that was the convening of state museum associations at Crystal Bridges in March of 2014. I cannot overstate how important this meeting was to the Kansas Museums Association. Lisa and I were able to go, and we were able to connect with other people that were dealing with the same things we were dealing with. We were able to talk to people about this strategic plan. We were trying very hard to implement and, as I say, live, because that's what we were really trying to do. So we took full advantage of those networking opportunities, and we were in a good position to participate fully with that honest gathering. Because we had done all this strategic planning, we knew our association's pluses and minuses, needs and strengths inside and out. So we really were there at a good time, and that was a good time for us to really process all those things we had been living with through 2012 and 2013. Ultimately, the convening convinced us that KMA was on the right track, that we were taking the steps we needed to take to put our association in a good position. We left that meeting at Crystal Bridges energized. We were confident about what we were doing, and we were ready and to have some very real, honest, and difficult conversations with our members and our board. We came home and we had some difficult discussions about priorities and member services, and we were brave enough to take some calculated risks. As an organization, we took what I would call two major calculated risks. We knew that there could be problems if we failed, but we also knew that if we succeeded, the benefits would far outweigh the risk that we were taking. The first thing we did is we set higher standards for our programs. We were like many organizations and offered multiple workshops or I don't know what you want to call them, meetings around the state throughout the calendar year, and we were seeing declining enrollment in those workshops and things. And we felt that it was more important to offer fewer of them and make sure they were higher quality workshops. So we sought funders to get national speakers. We decided to focus on quality over quantity. And in the end, that was a pretty successful move for us. Instead of knowing that there were going to be 3 or 4 workshops throughout the year that you could choose one and go to, when KMA offered a workshop, you knew it was going to be high quality and you knew it was going to be the only one. So people prioritized differently. We did risk falling off the radar. We risked not being at the top of mind for our members, but that hasn't been the case. We've actually had pretty good luck with that with those improved workshops. The second risk we took, which I thought frankly was a larger one, is we decided to partner with the Mountain Plains Museums Association for a joint conference. As I said earlier, so much of our finances were tied to our conference that this was a major risk for us. If this conference didn't go well, we were on the hook for some pretty significant money, and it would really put us in a bad position. However, we felt that bringing a regional conference to our members, which was something that they would not necessarily easily be able to attend without this opportunity, and forming a partnership with the larger organization outweighed those risks. So KMA took a financial risk. We did have to cede some control when it came to the conference planning, but in the end, it worked out very well for all of us. We were able to have a very successful conference. If I recall, and Bob can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure we were able to put our organization on some stronger financial footing as a result of that conference. We made good friends with Mountain Plains. Our members got to go to a conference that they wouldn't otherwise get to, and it gave KMA board members the confidence to keep thinking creatively about partnerships and the confidence to think creatively about what we can bring to our members and how we can do it well. These probably don't sound like big risks when we talk about them today, but at the time, especially the joint meeting with MPMA felt like we were doing something that KMA wouldn't have done before. It felt like we were changing the course of the association and creating a culture where we could be creative and where we could think about partnerships and where we didn't have to do things the same old way. These actions moved KMA into to a new direction, and it put us into a position for more advanced strategic thinking, and Bob's going to tell you about that.
Hi, I'm back. The history that Shannon just gave was front of mind when I joined the board of the Kansas Museums Association. I moved to Kansas in 2010. Was actually a speaker at the 2011 conference, and then was asked to join the board and did in 2011. So I've had about 8 years of experience with the organization. At the time that I joined, Lisa had been hired and was working to introduce some new systems within the organizational structure, stronger board engagement, and efforts that led ultimately to Shannon's movement towards the strategic plan. I felt like there was a general culture of kind of fear of change or go under. We knew that we could not continue as we had been. Many of us had no interest in being a part of an organization that was not growing and addressing its challenges in a thoughtful and impactful way. And so the years of Shannon's presidency, vice presidency, and presidency, Lisa's early years, my involvement, the involvement of several other board members, was a really ripe time for discussion. And as Shannon's already indicated, the convening at Crystal Bridges, I think, was a critical catalyst for an inspiration to try to really make some difference for the organization as we move forward. I wanted to go back to the strategic plan for just a second. In an overview summary of the strategic plan, we came up with 4 key factors to lead the organization for future change. And these were priorities for long-term viability and sustainability, and I'm going to read them so I get them correct. Number 1 was to continue to provide a high-quality annual conference. Number 2, to strengthen KMA branding, identity, and communications. Number 3 was continue to make institutional grants to aid member museums for small projects to improve operations. And number 4 was to develop strategic statewide and regional partnerships to diversify KMA's revenue and to support and deliver mission-based programs. So the efforts the groundwork laid by the strategic plan then I think set us in the position to be thoughtful and optimistic about the opportunities presented by the joint Mountain Plains Museum Association KMA conference that we presented in 2016. I was vice president at that time and was responsible for KMA's portion of the conference as vice president, and so intimately involved in all aspects of how that went. I will tell you that it was an enormous amount of work. However, in the end, I think that work is what proved to the board that we had the capacity to actually take on a major challenge and be successful in that process. It was a real all hands on deck kind of about 18 months of activity, and the last 6 months were frankly god awful. But the end result was that we had, I believe it was the second highest attended Mountain Plains conference in their history to that date. I believe we had 601 participants, and which is fourfold what we can have, more than fourfold what we can have at a KMA conference. I also chaired I was the KMA representative of the development committee for that, and we had a $30,000 obligation to raise funds for sponsorship funds to support the conference, and we were successful in that. And because of the high attendance and the solid sponsorships that we were able to achieve, we came out of that conference with a very sizable revenue for KMA. And so that was really important for us. So this whole MPMA experience was really important for us. One was the financial stability that it presented, and I'll go into that in a little more detail in a moment. And then I think equally important, we proved to ourselves as a board and as an organization that we had the capacity to actually do something well beyond what we thought we could do. We were not, at the time we did the MPMA conference, we had other partnerships that we've done over the years, most notably a strong relationship with the Kansas Humanities Council, which is now called Humanities Kansas, and a bit of a role with taking up some of the slack related to Kansas's elimination of its Arts Council under the Sam Brownback administration. We had to become a stronger voice for the arts, and are actually now involved in a process. Some of our members are very involved in a process to revitalize and bring back the Arts Council in its original form. We now took greater risks. The experience with MPMA made us go back and think about how we really want to deliver our services in the state. And one thing that a problem we have in Kansas, and many of you do as well, is we're rather large geographically. It's 450 miles from one side of the state to the other, straight across, and quite a bit further diagonally. So while we found and we knew historically that our conferences in the center of the state or in major metropolitan centers did better financially for us, we always felt like we were shortchanging other aspects, other areas of the state, not providing them the opportunity to host a conference, to be the place of experience for our conference, for our members, and frankly, to just diversify our representation as we moved as we presented these annual conferences. So we went through a process at the board level, and though we didn't technically formalize it, we now operate under an informal effort to have the conference in a more remote or rural area of the state every other year. And we've done that. We're now on, we've done 2 of those where we purposefully moved away from a major highway or a major urban area. Those have been tremendously successful programmatically. They have had limited success financially. However, the strength of our finances through the efforts we've made with MPMA and then other ongoing fundraising activities that we have gave us the confidence that we could do that. So I feel like that this annual moving the conference around the state's been an important focus of diversifying and giving a stronger voice to all the museums that we represent across our state, rather than those museums primarily in the large urban areas. We also, at the same time that Shannon inaugurated the strategic plan, we put a lot of energy into board development and also in board financial commitment to KMA, into fundraising. We introduced a much more aggressive annual giving program, and we took the opportunity of the success of the Mountain Plains Conference to begin to talk about long-term sustainability and the establishment of an endowment. We were able, through some outstanding board leadership, with an initial major gift, to open an endowed fund. We use the Greater Salina Community Foundation in Salina, Kansas, as the repository for our endowed funds. And to give you a sense, we launched, I believe, in 2015. 2019 is our 50th anniversary, and back then our goal was to have $50,000 in our endowed fund by our 50th anniversary, and we reached $50,000 a couple of years ago. So our endowed funds are doing very well, and we've got to come up with a new fundraiser for our 50th now. But we didn't want it to just be major gifts. We wanted to build broader culture of giving, to make not only the board but our members understand that they had a vested interest in the health and success of the organization. What we chose to do was to create 2 different annual giving programs. One is at our annual conference, and they're 2 clubs. We call them the One Up and the High Five. One Ups are meant for new or younger members of the profession, and we ask that they commit $1 a year for every year they've been in service. So if you've been at a museum for 5 years, we ask you give $5 a year to support KMA. High Five is $5 for every year. So when you're like me and you've got 42 years of service, then you're writing a pretty decent check. But that's what it should be. we're the ones that have benefited from being a part of this museum community for a very long time, so we should be major donors to it. So those two programs now are, I believe, at the Independence Conference we just had, I think we ran about 30% of attendees participating in those two annual giving activities. We're less interested, though the money that we're getting is important, we're much more interested in their commitment and their willingness to understand that they need to be vested financially in the organization's health. We also, through the Greater Salina Community Foundation, we participate in an annual spring fundraiser they have called Match Madness. And that is a one-day appeal. Most of you probably are involved in this in some way or another. And we've become, we're now getting a few $1,000s in Match Madness contributions from a much wider group of individuals. Although I will say that I believe we have just about, I think we have 100% board participation in both of those two giving areas. So that's been something that I've been really proud of to see. I don't think it wasn't that there wasn't the interest a decade ago in giving annually to the organization, but I don't think we had a culture that emphasized it. And now I believe that with that financial commitment, frankly, I think comes a greater awareness and commitment to the success of the organization by everyone involved. I really feel like that has been as critical a component as some of the other things that we've been able to do. We also, the relationship with Wichita State then has contributed, has come at a point when we can now use our financial stability, as Shannon already indicated earlier in her remarks, to be much more risk-taking as an organization. And I believe that that was part of the enthusiasm by the board to embrace working with Wichita State, and now having them being under contract with WSU Public Policy Management Center for our operational activities. Another issue that was on the table over the last few years has been succession planning. Lisa Dodson is of an age where she's going to be looking to retire in a few years. We did not want to be an organization that was dependent on the personality and strength of its paid employee to keep us going as an organization. While they have a huge role, the organization has to be better than the sum of any individual involved in it. And I feel very strongly about that, as does Lisa. And so I think one of the real pluses of our contract with PPMC is that there are now a number of people who participate in the management of our association. Lisa is technically our assigned officer as PPMC, and we give her the title of executive director, and she uses that on our behalf. But there are two other senior officials who are very aware of our activities and participate in things like our contract negotiations or discussions that we have about new initiatives or things like that. And then there's an operational person who I'm hopeful is being groomed potentially to succeed Lisa. And if that specific individual doesn't choose to do that, I am confident that the organization there will be able to provide the talent that we need as an association to move forward. We had to, we wanted to find the right partner for the management of KMA. And I've already indicated that the PPMC relationship was serendipity with Lisa returning to her job there. But it was much more than that. They have a history of managing other state associations. There are 4 associations in the state of Kansas that contract, besides KMA, that contract with PPMC, and 3 of those have had their relationship for over 15 years. So they are organizations like the Kansas Government Finance Officers Association, City Clerks and Municipal Finance Officers Association of Kansas, and the Kansas County Clerks and Election Officials Associations. One of the interesting things about this relationship is each of those, these people have to be certified. And so they have a strict educational programming that they have to go through every year to maintain their certifications. And Wichita State has been the institution that has overseen all of that activity, all of that training and the certifications. So that was something that really appealed to us. We not only were they managing associations, but they were managing associations at a much higher level, in my opinion, than we were currently at, and I think more like the kind of association we strive to be. So they were, I think, a natural in this partnership. I wanted to read quickly what they list as their expertise, and this is something that you all will want to look at as you think about any possible relationships you might want to explore. Let me mention that the handouts, one of the handouts is our contract. The contract itself, I think, is of less of interest, but what it should be really of interest to you is the scope of work, which is Exhibit A to the contract. And the points I'm about to go through are listed in that scope of work. That's where the real meat of, I think, the webinar is in that scope of work with WSU. Leadership development for elected officials, customized leadership, executive management, and professional development, facilitation of governing body retreats and community forums, education and certification for members of professional associations, as I've already mentioned, design, facilitation, and synthesis of stakeholder processes for community engagement, and that was of real interest to us as an organization, consultation on community and nonprofit organizational goal setting and strategic planning, community and organizational surveys, applied research on issues identified by state and local officials, and technical assistance on public management and financial issues. So they provide, and have been for a number of years, a very wide range of management services, and they have the expertise to even get to take it down to the nuts and bolts of operations themselves. Now, to get to our actual contract, the KMA contract was the process we went through is we first negotiated a 1-year pilot. We sat down with PPMC. We looked at sample contracts that they had already negotiated with other entities. I will admit that it was beneficial because I was at that time the director of the Ulrich Museum of Art at Wichita State University, so I was on campus as well. I knew some of these individuals through my own work at the university, so that played into the relationship as well, that I was right there. And so and I was probably, at least I was vice president and then president during that process. So we negotiated our 1-year pilot, and with the intent at that time to come up with something that we were excited about that would then become the basis for a 3-year renewable contract. We want the stability and of having a multi-year contract, because it can become very time consuming if you're constantly renegotiating. One of the things that we did as well that I think was really smart is our contracts for about $20,000 a year. And And then it has as a component of the contract, we're pre-approved in the contract with board approval. We can spend up to an additional $5,000 a year of services, services not defined by the current contract with PPMC. So if we choose to go into a new relationship with another organization and we need the skills of the center to help us pull that together, we know we've got in any given year a $5,000 capacity to go ahead and do that, and all the rates are spelled out, and so we know going in that we can get these additional services. Another little ingredient in this, and I raise this because it's worked out really well for us. We also, at the time of going into this contract, have another part-time employee, contract employee, an assistant director. She is contracted for a much smaller amount of money, but she provides key communications services for us. Does it in another city, but that has worked out extremely well. And so we also manage. We still have our own employee that we manage, as well as the contract, and that relationship is it's clear in our contract who's doing what, and what parts are the responsibility of KMA and what parts are the responsibility of PPMC. The scope of work, which is a part of the document that you have as a handout, includes general administration. So those they manage our board meetings, our committee, providing committee meeting support. Lisa Dodson serves as the spokesperson for the organization. That's something that will be unique to each of you if you look at something like this, and it may not be appropriate, particularly if you're walking into a new relationship. We felt like Lisa has the history and knowledge base to be the face of the organization. We wanted that. I can see that it could work quite well if that were something that was kept at the board level or by another contract person. I think personally, now in the third year, the best thing that's happened with this relationship is our conference administration. We're like everybody else, and we like to do the fun stuff and we don't like to do the boring stuff. And I think we were pretty patient as a board with our contract employees in their management of the conference, and but I can tell you we've gone 1,000% better working with WSU. We use their software systems. It comes with the contract. We now have a much more sophisticated online registration process, and I am really excited that we now have really tight financial controls of our conference, and we know our money as it's coming in. That has taken some work, but this year, for example, our conference was in November. Well, let me go back. 2 years ago, we were in our first full year of the three-year contract. Everyone was committed to trying to make it work as best we could, but we had monies coming. Some monies cannot go through Wichita State for reasons because of their state institution. So we've kept our own financial responsibilities in certain areas, like our giving programs, our high five and one ups. Those dollars need to flow through KMA. So 2 conferences ago, the conference in November of 2017, we didn't get the financials on that until January of 18. I was not happy about that, in part just because I want the monies in the same calendar year. But this last year, we had systems in place. We made some additional modifications and frankly, worked hard with WSU to figure out a strategy of how to get these things done with laptops, with software at the conference. And we had we had pretty accurate financials on our conference the last day of the conference. So we actually were able to close out our 2018 financials in 2018, and I think we only had a few dollars that wound up coming in January. So that may not be of interest to some of you, but for a nerd like me who wants to know where the money is and make decisions based on that money, I thought we're light years away ahead of where we have been in the past. So so that's been a really positive thing. KMA financial we continue, as I mentioned, some financial management, and we have gotten our systems in much better shape because of our relationship with PPMC. We've put more energy into it. They now are much more tightly integrated, and so it's been a real win there. Our contract provides for us some level of marketing support and a level of membership services support. And as I mentioned, the handout of the contract includes this entire scope of work, so that should be helpful to you. So I've rattled on for 30 minutes, and I apologize. And now Shannon's going to help wrap this up.
Hey, Shannon, this is Ruth Ann, and I just want to remind you, you have about 10 minutes. That's with no question.
I'll be quick.
Okay.
Because I'm just going to summarize a little bit of what Bob was talking about and talk about in general what KMA did to put themselves in position to make something like this work. Basically, there are some very tangible advantages to the WSU contract. As Bob said, there's organizational stability, and basic operational procedures are simply running better. Our conferences are more efficient, our financials are more efficient, and those are things that happen behind the scenes, so our members don't necessarily know that's happening, but it makes the board functions much more smoothly. In addition, we have access to some training and to some trainings that can be presented by WSU staff and faculty. So we have access to qualified trainers. We did a storytelling workshop with WSU staff earlier, I think that was last year. And so far there's been little cost associated with that. As part of our contract with them, we have access to some nice quality things we can add on to what we're doing. In addition, the other tangible thing is that Lisa has access to up-to-date industry information. This affects the way she may choose to manage the association. It gives us insight into trends faster than we would have gotten them otherwise, and it informs our policy and future programs. Also, graduate students. They're always good to have on hand. They help with lots of odds and ends activities that need to happen for your association. And they're also learning about nonprofits, and so it's a win-win with that with WSU as well. Last but not least, something that I think Bob and I both talk about, but it seems like we talk about it a lot, but I promise we could talk about it even more. This agreement with WSU helps with our succession planning. He touched on the fact that Lisa may wish to retire in the future, and this agreement with Wichita State sets us up so that our organization will continue to function at a high level without some of the hiccups that we've seen in the past when there's been a change of leadership. In addition, it frees up our board to focus on the big picture and not worry quite so much about those operational things that always bog down a volunteer organization. Last but not least, why does this work for KMA? This type of innovative thinking really keeps the board engaged. It gives them something to rally around, and it gives them a chance to discuss their shared vision for leadership, and really make a mark as to where they'd like to see the association go. It also allows us to be prepared to think creatively, take advantage of opportunities when they're presented to us, and to continue to take calculated risks. The last thing we want is for KMA to become to be where it was in 2010, to be a little bit lost and not quite sure of its direction. And having the operations taken care of and set at such a high level with WSU, it really frees up our board to think creatively about partnerships and to think creatively about risks that that might not seem so risky in the future. And last but not least, in my experience with the Kansas Museums Association, every leader, be it board member or director, wants to leave that association better than they found it. This agreement with WSU is just one component that allows the leadership to do that. And that's all I have to say about this today. So I will turn it over to Ruth Ann. Thank you so much for listening to Bob and I.
Yeah, well, I will come back and see if anyone has any questions. And if you have your audio turned on, I might be able to call on you if you raise your hand. What? Lauren, let me unmute you. And you can you hear? Can we hear you? Lauren? Okay, well, I've got her unmuted, but maybe not. Does anybody else have a question? Did anyone write it into the little question area? And I should have mentioned that earlier too, down here where you see the questions and you see the handouts. And the handouts are those documents that Bob referred to, and they should be really helpful to you. Often we have a PowerPoint. We didn't do that this time. We really just heard from these people. And the thing that impresses me more than anything, I mean, the creative thinking is terrific. The keeping your eyes peeled for productive collaborations is irreplaceable. But, you know, the people who pulled this off are really board members. I mean, Lisa was working right along with them, but the board commitment is what made it work. Okay, here I have a question from Celeste. Has their access to public policy trends impacted their work with the state? Who wants that one?
I'll give it a crack.
Okay.
Lauren, well, one thing specifically that we're, I mentioned briefly, one thing specifically that we're interested in exploring is a greater role that we can have in organizing this resurrection of the Kansas Arts Commission. And I think we've been much more, more engaged at the state level and with our legislators as representatives of the museums of Kansas, and what we think needs to happen related to that commission. So that's a great Lisa question, but the other thing that isn't so much public policy, but I wanted to give it a shout out, is I think Museum Advocacy Day has had a real impact on us, and we're very excited by our experiences with Museum Advocacy Day, and we're now talking as an organization about efforts we can bring to our state at the state level.
Good. Thanks for that plug as well, because you know COSMA is going to be meeting on the Sunday prior to Museums Advocacy Day. Okay, I have Lauren's question now. She was not able to open the audio, but she typed it in, and she says two questions really. Number one, would you be willing to share your strategic plan with another state museum board? Number two,
absolutely.
Yeah, yes. Number two, was it difficult to fundraise and get sponsors for KMA because you are approaching the same people you have to approach for your own museum?
Yeah,
Shannon? the old double thing. Yeah.
Shannon, do you want to try that one?
Sure. I would say, fundraising is not my gift when it comes to board work. So, I would say that what KMA did is they were very thoughtful about what they wanted to raise funds for, and we had insider knowledge that there was a funder that was interested in those types of things. There's a funder in the Kansas City area that likes to focus on capacity and likes to do things that are nationally oriented. And KMA wasn't asking for really that much money to do those things. So we were able to, with the knowledge that we had a funder that was looking to do those sorts of things, we were able to find some opportunities to ask for money for those things. I would say the biggest thing KMA's done with regards to fundraising, however, was the growth of the endowment fund and the engagement of the board for board giving. This particular funder that I'm referencing only likes to give to organizations with 100% board giving. So building that culture of giving was critical in attracting that funder. And Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but attracting that funder led to others. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. And more specific to the question is something we're trying to figure out how to do, and we have not yet been successful. There's a very large foundation that supports activities in one quadrant of the state of Kansas, about 25% of the state. And the applicants would have to be the museums in that quadrant. We're in conversation with representatives of museums in that quadrant of the state and working to design programming that KMA can facilitate on their behalfs. So that's something where we've spent a year and a half just working to understand the needs of those museums, and those museums understanding our needs and how we could dance together potentially with that funder. Yet to be successful, but something that we think could be a model for us if we can pull it off.
And I think that overall we knew about the funder in the Kansas City area, which building a relationship with her really allowed us to show success in funding and build more around it.
Thank you so much, you guys. I think we're out of time. And I hate that because we could probably talk about this for a really long time. I appreciate you sharing your story because, we need to hear these success stories. It's really important as part of our State Museum Association community that we understand what our neighbors are doing and that we're learning from them. We don't steal ideas, but we sure do repurpose. And the idea of looking for the opportunities to collaborate, to form partnerships with other organizations in your community, it's really the name of the game, that and board commitment. To all of those of you who've been listening to us, thank you so much for your attention. Remember, all the webinars are recorded and put on the COSMA website. So if there's someone in your association that you really wish had heard this, there's a way that they can go back and listen to it. So with that said, thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Bob. Really appreciate it. Y'all have a good day.